The Atlantic cod. 30 years ago, the backbone of one of Eastern Canada's most prosperous industries. Now, virtually extinct. Some people are already familiar with the basic cause of this disaster, but what triggered such extreme extraction of cod from the ocean? Today, we're going to find out. This is the story of the disappearing cod. Cod fishing in Canada first began when John Cabot, while sailing near Newfoundland, discovered large populations of cod surrounding his ship. The cod were so plentiful that simply lowering baskets, waiting for the fish to swim in, and then pulling the baskets out resulted in an abundantly full basket. Let's have a quick look at what this may have been like for Cabot and his crew.
Watch out for the back end of this.
Okay.
You can see that there is no machinery in use here. The number of fish being caught balanced with the number of fish spawning each year, which made the system both renewable and sustainable. As technology grew more and more advanced, however, more fish were caught, and the stock was unable to recover in time for the following year. This resulted in the number of cod beginning to substantially decrease. As the 1950s and 1960s progressed, advances in fishing technology allowed for more fish to be captured than ever before. Instead of humans manually dipping baskets into the ocean, huge nets could be lowered mechanically by boats and then hauled up. Unfathomable numbers of cod were removed from the ocean using these boats. This was pleasing to the stakeholders because they were happy to see their hard work paying off. The business was humming along with no sign of decline. The amount of cod seemed endless, but was it? Research today shows that the answer was no. Quickly, cod stocks began to decline. The cod fishery reached its peak between 1968 and 1970, when many foreign and native trawler fleets drained most of the cod stocks. Finally, the government began to realize that the scientists who had warned of potential cod extinction were telling the truth. The system really was unsustainable. Canada implemented an exclusion zone in 1976 to block these foreign trawlers which had drained so much cod. But sadly for the cod, this idea was not effective at all. The foreign trawlers which had been blocked by the exclusion zone were simply replaced by federally subsidized Canadian boats. So, the exclusion zone hardly decreased the rate of fishing in the Atlantic Ocean. Some analysts have even noted that as a result of increases in unreported fishing, many of the statistics for the year surrounding 1980 are very likely to be below the actual amounts of fish removed from the oceans. We do know for a fact that in 1988, fishing in the Atlantic as a whole, including other species besides cod, brought in almost $1 billion in profit. This was great for the economy, but things were about to go downhill quickly. It was now the year 1989. Complaints were beginning to surface from the general public about the number of fish remaining in the ocean. As a result of how profitable the business had been, however, the government didn't bother to set manageable quotas at first. Still, fishermen noted that their nets were starting to lack fish. As cod numbers dropped to unprofitable levels, businesses switched to fishing other Atlantic species. These species stocks collapsed as well from the unprecedented demand. Finally, Canada had had enough. The government finally gave up and decided that it would be impossible to keep the industry going. Over the next decade, various moratoriums were declared on the Atlantic cod fisheries by the Ministry of Fisheries, led by John Crosby. The rapid overfishing that had started in the 70s and 80s brought billions of dollars into the economy and provided jobs for a significant percentage of Canada's population finally came to an abrupt halt. The closure of what had been one of Canada's largest industries had a devastating effect on the local population. Over 40,000 employees lost their jobs. They were not happy.
If that's the best you can do, buddy, you should get out of it right now.
This was John Crosby's reception. More than 350 fishermen and plant workers. They're furious about the compensation Crosby has arranged for the shutdown of their fishery. They wanted details.
There'll be an announcement tomorrow.
Crosby confirmed nothing. That didn't satisfy the crowd, which blames the whole crisis on Ottawa's mismanagement of the fishery.
This situation is not our fault, Mr. Crosby. This situation is not my fault either. No, it's the government's mismanagement. It's mismanagement.
Yeah, definitely not happy.
For more than 400 years, won't be obliterated. But when they accused Crosby of failing to protect that fishery, it prompted this.
I didn't take the fish from the goddamn water.
But who took it? You and your goddamn people took it. You and your people took it.
No, I'm trying to do what I can.
Yes, you're doing shit on it. That's what you're doing.
The leader of a Newfoundland union for fishermen stated that this closure created a famine of biblical scale. In 7 years, catches of fish in the Atlantic had dropped by 87%. Analysis of the events leading up to and following the closure led people to the discovery that prior estimates of the stock levels for Atlantic fishing had been grossly inaccurate. One example was when the lobster stocks were predicted to collapse near the beginning of the 80s. Only 10 years later, the lobster stocks had doubled in size and were still growing. Another problem was that limitations that were imposed on fishermen were ineffective. When the government restricted the number of boats allowed to fish, boats were upgraded to catch more fish. A number of fishermen also ignored the legal quotas, caring more about personal profit than the sustainability of the ecosystem. Large nets dragged along the bottom were used to reel in as many cod as possible. They destroyed other sea life, including many sources of food for the cod. The overall mentality at the time was that profit is more valuable than longevity. By 1995, estimates showed that all the remaining cod constituted a fishable biomass of only 1,700 tons, compared to the yearly catch in the 1950s of 250,000 tons. In the 17th century, 100 years of fishing resulted in only 8 million tons of cod. The same amount was captured in the 50s and 60s after only 15 years of fishing. The fishing rate had increased 7 times over. The largest cod stock in the world, northern cod, had a total reduction in spawning of 99%, virtual extinction. 10 years after the moratorium was put in place, the cod populations had been harmed so badly that there was still little to no rebound. To this day, the cod population still has not recovered. In 2016, some cod fishing resumed in earnest, but 2 years later, the government once again reduced the cod quota, finding that cod stocks had once again declined. There is still hope that the cod population may one day recover, but it's going to take a long time and a lot of patience from the international community. For now, though, it seems to be the end of the road for northern cod fishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or suggestions, be sure to leave them in the comment below. Thanks for watching.